Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, we successfully delete our album. So now I want to do the same things for our artist. So now I want to delete our artist. So for now, if you want to delete this artist, first of all, we have to define some of the button, right? I have to define some of the delete button in our album list. So after that, I want to add some of the buttons. So we have to go to our album list page. So now go to our album list. So that is our first tab, and into the first tab, that is our album list, right? So into this album list, after this, okay, so here, that is our table. So after this, I take one of the bracket. So I just simply define the bracket, and after this bracket, I take one of the ahref. And here I also want to define one of the on click. I have already discussed about that things with you. I want to display one of the on click JavaScript and the return and the confirm. Okay, return confirm. Into the return confirm function, here I want to define our message. I want to delete it as a delete. Okay, delete musician. So if you really want to delete it, so if you want to delete it, then they have some of the pop-up message which will be displayed with this specific name. And also for this button here, I want to define one of the button. So I just simply define on the class. So I just simply define on the class as a btn, and better for that delete, I use the danger. Okay, right, danger, and then btn sm. So that is one of the bootstrap class. I just simply define, and then our button name will be as a delete. I just name it as a delete. So now if you click as a save all, and now go to our album list page, click as a refresh. Yeah, you can see that is actually our button. And also if you click as a delete, you can see it's now showing as a pop-up message as a delete musician. So if you click as OK, then it will be deleted. So now we have to also put some of the action. So for doing this, we have to create one of the function in our view. So go to our view page, and into the view, it will be just like that same, because we have already created our main functionality. It will be just like that same. Better I want to copy it. Okay, I just simply paste it. So here I want to create another one of the function as a delete not album. So now I want to change it. It will be as a delete musician. Okay, it will be as a delete musician. And also here we have to pass some of the ID. So I will do the things later. And also here we have to define our specific get ID. I will also do the things later. So now into the diction here I define as a delete one of the message ID as a delete is success, and I also want to display some of the message as a musician deleted successfully. So I just simply define as a musician. Okay, musician deleted successfully. This type of message will be displayed, and also here it will be display. I want to define that things in our delete HTML, rather than if you want to create another new HTML page, you can create it. But it's totally okay, because here, into the delete here, I didn't define anything. I only define one of the ID as a delete scheme success for display our message. So I just simply define that same name. Okay. I hope you can well understand about it. So now we have to do, after that we have to create one of the URL for this one. So now go to that your URL, and here I just simply copy it, and now I just simply paste it. So here also you have to delete it with a specific one of the ID. So I do the things later, and now first of all I name it as a delete our artist, and into the view I have already created one of the function. So in our view, I have created the function name as a delete musician. So I just simply copy it, and now here I name it as our delete musician, and also I define that name as a delete artist, right? So now we have to define our this path. We have to define our this path in our album list area. That means here in our href. So now I want to pass it. So I think you already know about it. What exactly you have to do? You have to define as a key as a URL. Right, and then our fast app, that means our app name. So I define our app name as a fast app, maybe yeah, that is actually the fast app. So I just simply copy it, and now into the fast app here I have to define our path name. So I have defined our path name into the URL, that is our name I have defined as a delete artist, right? So I just simply copy it, And now after that, I just simply define other delect artist. And as I told you, also we have to delect it with a specific one of the ID, right? You can see that is also one of the ID. So now we have to delect it with the ID. So for the reasons here, I want to define one of the ID as a artist. Okay, sorry, artist ID. So I just name it as a artist ID, and into this artist ID we have to also get our specific this table ID name. That means if you go to our album, not this album, the musician, into the musician I want to delect it. So into the musician also there have some of the ID. So with this ID I want to delect it. So that is the ID I have already defined. If you go to our view, and into the view here, in our edit artist, into the edit artist, you can say I just take our specific ID data. That means there is a specific ID data. I take the things with this our artist info. So now I want to defining it. So I just simply copy it. So from here, that is a musician table, I get all the data. So now with this artist info, so into this artist info, I want to access our ID. So I just simply define this ID. Okay friends, so here that is our ID. That means that is actually our artist ID. So this the artist ID we have to also add in our URL. So into the URL here we have to add it. So I just simply define that ID. So our ID name, I have defining it on here as the artist ID. I just simply copy it, and now in our URL I just name it as the artist ID. And also we have to add this ID in our request. That means in our view, into the view I have created our function. Our function name I have defined as a delect musician. Into the request, before I have already added that ID for our delect album. So now for our delect musician I have to also do the same things. I just simply define our artist ID. Okay friend, so now let's check this out. If you now click as a save all, I just click as a save all, and now if you refresh it, now if you click as a delect, that means here I want to delect our this ID. That means our this artist, click as a delect, click as a OK, and here you can see it's now showing as a musician delected successfully. So it's now showing on here, but our musician is not delected because of all here I didn't define any code for delected, right? So it's only actually doing that things when you actually put that action, it's redirected to our this delect HTML page with this success message. So for the reasons our this message is visible, but our data is not delected. So now here we have to define some of the code for delect this data. So it should be just like that same. Better I just copy it, and here now I want to delect it. So I just simply define on here. So I just simply define that things as an album. So now I want to change it. I want to name it as an artist. Sorry. Okay, I just name it as artist, and then I want to delect it from which table? I want to delect it from our model. If you go to our model, I want to delect it from our musician table, right? So I just simply copy it, and now here I define our musician table, and musician table all that objects get, and the primary key I have defined our primary key as a artist ID. So I just simply define as a artist ID. It should be delected, right? So now it should be delected from our musician. So now if you click as a save all, now first of all I want to check it, everything is well. And now if you go here, like now if you go to the home, there have the three musicians. One is the Kazi, and the our Michael Jackson, and the Taylor Swift, right? So now I want to delect it. Like if you go to our Michael Jackson, and here one things, as I told you before, I have already defined one of the primary key, and also I defined that cascade. Like if you go to our model, and into the model here you can see now it will be very much clear to you. Into the artist I have defined our model as a foreign key. Into the musician on delect model cascade. That means it will be do if you delect this our artist, automatically this artist related all that our album will be delected. Okay, so here I have defined this part. I show you right now. I want to remove it. Like I just want to delete it, click as a delete. So that is actually Michael Jackson, click as a OK. Now you can see it's now showing as a musician delected successfully. Now if you go to home, yes, now you can see friend, now our this Michael Jackson is totally gone, and also Michael Jackson related all that album is also gone from here. Okay, so for the reasons here I have defined that cascade model. So on delete model, when it should be delected, so I just simply define as a cascade. That means this musician related, all that album also will be delected. So now it's totally gone. If you go to the database, so that is our database. If you click on the browse, you can see Michael Jackson is totally gone. That is actually the one of the ID. So now if you go and our musician, if you go to that our album, and with the album here you can see they have no artist data as a 2. So that means all that ID data is totally removed from here. So that is the reasons I have defined that part. So friend, I think you can well understand about it, how can do that work. So now from here you can add new musician, right? So you can add musician, you can edit this musician. If you want to add new album, you can add this new album from here. And also if you want to delete it, how can delete it? If you want to delete your musician, you can delete this musician. If you want to delete the musician album, you can also delete this album. So that is actually the main core things. That means if you now you can create this data, you can insert this data into the database, you can read this data from to the database, you can update this data, and also you can delete this data with a specific some of the notification. So friend, that is one of the most important part in Django. So if you already understand that main code application, then you can create simple any type of dynamic website. Right, with this concept you can use some of the dynamic website, because into the dynamic website maximum time you have to apply this code, right? So now that is the perfect. And also in Django there is the another important part, that is the user authentication. That means the user will be able to log in, user will be able to log out, user will be able to register some of the account. So for that reasons, in our next video I will start a new session. It's about that authentication. So how can working with the user authentication? In our next session we will start it. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.